That's it. Over there.
What?
The old Garvey wagon road.
Well, what about it?
We'll be sticking close to it.
Why?
Well, it's a straight shoot right into Fort Reunion. Maybe, 4 days at the most.
There we are, right out there in the open, and there they come, whooping it out of nowhere. They'll have us hanging feet high and let the crows pluck out our eyes.
You may not be aware, Miss Cresta Lee, but I'm a professional soldier, and I happen to be well experienced in this part of the country.
How long have they kept you private?
No one's kept me, Miss Lee. It was my father's wish.
You take that road, Soldier Blue, and you'll get your father coming out here to bury you.
My father's dead. He was killed at Little Bighorn last year. Murdered by the Sioux.
I wonder if that General Custer took your father's advice. Well, it's a sure thing I ain't taking yours. Listen, you keep the rifle. The jerky you can have. Just give me some of this hardtack. There we are. Good luck, Soldier Blue. I'll tell him at the fort it wasn't my fault.
The following film podcast frequently contains adult content, including foul language and descriptions of adult situations. Spoilers for the films discussed occur often. Listener discretion is advised. Now take it away, Dr. Rausch.
They must be destroyed on sight.
All right, we're back, and it is They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, episode 165. I'm your host, Lee. I can't help wondering what this goddamn country's coming to, Russell. Truer words have never been spoken. Well, depending on the country, I guess, but yeah.
Sure.
And I'm joined by my co-host, Daniel. If you get too all fired horny during the night, just go soak your head in the stream over there, Harper. How you doing, sir?
I'll keep that in mind. It's good advice. Generally good advice.
Mm-hmm. If you got the if this movie wasn't so dire that we're covering tonight, it's like you could easily make the joke Soldier Blue Balls.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of we'll get into it. There's some weird shit in this movie, but sure.
Yeah. But we are covering Soldier Blue from 1970. But before we get into that, we have a few comments to get through, so we'll get right into it. Jay Deering left a couple comments on the Facebook group. First off, in response to our Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid episode, he said, "You both like it. That's great. My favorite Peckinpah film right above Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia." Right on. I think for me, it's just the opposite. I think Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid's my second favorite. So
Sure.
And then he says, "Please do Abel Ferrara's Bad Lieutenant. Harvey Keitel with his dong hanging out, acting batshit crazy. NC-17 family fun." Yeah, none gets raped in that film too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'd be down for doing Bad Lieutenant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's something we will eventually get to. Maybe do like the Abel Ferrara and the Werner Herzog's Bad Lieutenant in one episode.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, contrast to compare.
They're very, very different films. I mean, it's really, I think the thing there is that the real title of the Herzog is what is it, Port of Call Los Angeles or whatever the subtitle is. And they just put the Bad Lieutenant thing on there just for shits and giggles. I don't know. It's a weird movie. But
you trying to tell me that's not a direct sequel to the Harvey Keitel film?
Spiritual remake.
Jeff Williams pipes in with his recommendation of the week, and this time it is another Western, and it's the Oxbow Incident from 1942. He says a Western that completely and mercilessly takes no prisoners in subverting the male archetypes of the genre. Ain't no heroes to be found here, just Dana Andrews pathetically begging for his life, and Henry Fonda getting cucked hard by a city slicker. Okay, an Academy Award nominee for Best Picture in 1944 that probably would have won if it hadn't been released in the same year as Casablanca. Awesome.
I have seen that. It's been a number of years, but yeah, no, I'd definitely be down for that.
Cool. Thank you as always, Jeff. And now we have a YouTube comment, but this time out, it's a good one. So,
okay.
Yeah. So this is from someone called Shadowman4710, and he says, I've always thought Tick, Tick, Tick was an underappreciated little gem of a film. Jim Brown, not the world's greatest actor by any stretch, is pretty solid, and George Kennedy is on point as the former sheriff who begrudgingly joins forces with Brown to stand up to a racist mob. The acting is first class throughout, particularly by Clifton James as the enigmatic clan leader whose help they end up asking for. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we're both in full agreement there. That's
it's
an excellent film.
Yeah,
and interestingly enough, our director tonight directed that same film. So yeah.
In fact, I ran across this film originally when we did Carnal Knowledge because I was looking at Candice Bergen, early roles, wondering what else she did, and kind of ran across the title. And then when we did Tick, 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 which also connected me to this, I was like, well, it's come up twice. We have to do it. So that's pretty much how that happened.
Yeah. So without further ado, we're going to get into some podcast promos and some music, and we're going to come back and talk about Soldier Blue.
Looking for something different in your podcast library? Then why not check out the Podcast Under the Stairs? I'm the host, Duncan McLeish, and joining me each week will be a special guest as we examine some classic, old-school horror favourites, as well as some modern classics. That's not to say that we don't tackle some of the, let's say, more questionable entries into the horror genre. And if all that wasn't enough, we have a subset of shows called Baz v Horror, where our horror novice, the Baz, tackles horror in all shapes and forms to see who will come out victorious. So what are you waiting for? The show can be found at podcastunderthestairs.wordpress.com and on Stitcher and iTunes. The Podcast Under the Stairs is a proud member of Legion Podcast Network. This is Duncan McLeish from Under the Stairs, signing off.
Great coffee.
Hey. Chad, who's that strange, somber man on the cover of that book you're reading?
Oh, that's H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh, I've heard of him, but I never really got into his stuff. It's kind of strange and hard to read.
I used to think that too, but that all changed when I started listening to the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
What's that?
The H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast is a weekly podcast.
Tell me more.
Well, these two really smart and hilarious guys give a synopsis of the story, then they talk about its background, the critical views, and what it says about the author.
Well, where can I listen?
Let me tell you, Chris, you can go to hppodcraft.com or, heck, just subscribe through iTunes. It's that easy.
Oh, Chad, I'm so excited. Now I can listen to this podcast and pretend to all my snooty friends that I actually read and understand H.P. Lovecraft.
Hey, that's what I do. Oh, dear.
hppodcraft.com.
You're traveling through another dimension. A dimension of not only film and sound, but mind. A journey into an auditory movie review adventure that must be experienced to be believed. There's a signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the Doomsday Clock. You can extract the Witch versus the Doomsday Clock podcast by either searching for WYCH on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, TuneIn, and on your Android device, which, versus the Doomsday Clock, is a proud member of Legion Podcasts. So prepare yourself. The podcast ice is gonna break!
All right, Soldier Blue from 1970.
On November 29, 1864, a unit of cavalry numbering 900 men surrounded a peaceful Cheyenne village at Sand Creek, Colorado. The Indians raised the American flag and a white flag of surrender.
They're coming out, sir.
What? What's that?
I think it's Spotted Wolf. My God, sir, he's got a flag of truce. Yes, sir. It's a white flag.
Nonsense.
Well, here, see for
I
yourself.
told you, Lieutenant, give the order.
Sir?
What? Give the order!
Yes, sir. Open fire!
Nevertheless,
Ready!
the cavalry attacked, slaughtering 700 Indians,
Fire!
more than half of whom were women and children.
Troop! At the front! March!
The factual account of that massacre is now documented in a motion picture. Ralph Nelson's Soldier Blue.
Good brave lads, coming out here to kill themselves a real live Injun, putting up their forts in a country they've got no claim to. So what the hell do you expect the Indians to do? Sit back on their butts while the army takes over their land?
You saw for yourself what they did, taking off scalps.
Yeah, and who taught them that little trick? The white man.
Oh, and cutting off hands, and cutting off feet, and cutting off...
I know what they cut off, but at least they don't make tobacco pouches out of them. That's something else you soldier boys made up.
You're lying. Get that white woman out of there! Yes, sir.
Its misery.
What are you doing? Cresta.
A prayer, Soldier Blue? A nice poem? Say something pretty.
General Nelson A. Miles, Army Chief of Staff, termed the Sand Creek Massacre perhaps the foulest and most unjust crime in the annals of American history. Candice Bergen, Peter Strauss, Ralph Nelson's Soldier Blue.
Directed by Ralph Nelson. Written by Theodore V. Olson, who wrote the book, based on his book, basically Arrow in the Sun, and John Gay. Starring Candice Bergen as Kathy Maribel Cresta Lee, Peter Strauss as Onus Gant, Donald Pleasence as Isaac Cucumber. I feel bad laughing at anything in this film. We'll get into it, but
yeah, we will. There's a lot of stuff to laugh about in this film. There's really funny stuff. We'll get there. We'll get there.
It's very awkward. John Anderson as Colonel Iverson, George Rivero as Spotted Wolf, Dana Eclair as Captain Battles, Bob Caraway as Lieutenant McNair, Martin West as Lieutenant Spriggan, James Hampton as Private Menzies, Mort Mills as Sergeant O'Hearn, and George Russick as Running Fox. And we have a IMDb synopsis here from someone named Jean-Marc Rocher. After a cavalry group is massacred by the Cheyenne, only two survivors remain. Onus, a naive private devoted to his duty, and Cresta, a young woman who had lived with the Cheyenne 2 years and whose sympathies lie more with them than with the U.S. government. Together, they must try to reach the cavalry's main base camp. As they travel onward, Onus is torn between his growing affection for Cresta and his disgust for her anti-American beliefs. They reach the cavalry campsite on the eve of an attack on a Cheyenne village, where Onus will learn which side has really been telling him the truth. And yeah, that's pretty good.
Although I don't think there's a which side has been telling him the truth.
Yeah,
no, that's not really there. But yeah, no.
Yeah, I think he becomes more horrified and just out of his mind than get any deep revelations character-wise. But we'll get into it. Daniel, what's your sort of general thoughts on this one?
It's kind of a mess and kind of great. It's two good films that should not have been put together. It's on the one hand a pretty kind of charming rom-com western with two people learning to survive in the wilderness together and eventually getting it on, and that's perfectly charming actors. Looking at the both Peter Strauss and Candice Bergen, they're both still alive and they're both still working in television, which is one of those weird things. It's literally 50 years. These are talented, charming, intelligent people doing a thing, and then at the end, it just and then there's a massacre. Really hyper violent, even out Peckinpah's Peckinpah.
Yeah, it does.
Which was the thing that everybody talked about at the time, and kind of hangs a pall over the whole film. And so it's kind of, there's a lot of like really kind of fun stuff in terms of the relationship, and then ultimately it's like, let's do a little My Lai massacre metaphor here. Both of these are good films, but it does feel weird that it's one. So that's kind of my overall impression. It's kind of
There is this is a romantic comedy set in the Old West that is bookended by horrific allegories for the My Lai massacre, and
it'd be like if we sat down and we watched Battle of Algiers.
Yeah,
but like the bulk of the running time of Battle of Algiers, instead of it being what that movie is, it was like people charmingly flirting their way through like Algiers cafes.
It would be like two characters having like this rom-com romance in a cafe, or like romantic interest being pursued in one of the apartment buildings in Algiers or something like that, and then here comes the bombs at the end of the film, It seems so weird to me. I'm watching this and just all of a sudden, and here's I think my biggest problem with this film, aside from the vicious, gratuitous rape that happens at the end of the film, although you kind of think you see more than you actually really do see on screen, but goddamn. But here's the thing. This has one of the most just badly done scores as far as pairing it to the content of the film. Like, okay, it works for the romantic comedy thing, but my God, some scenes, even when the seriousness starts to ramp up in this film, it's still lighthearted, Old West, cowboys wear white and the bad guys wear black. I don't know.
It feels like it is trying. I mean, it's doing that revisionist Western thing, and I think it's, this is 1970, so this is like at the very tail end of like the Western being a like major commercial thing. Really by 1975, this was completely over. So there is this sort of sense in which I've got to think that the director, who is a talented guy who directed a lot of really cool stuff, was kind of doing this intentionally and kind of like trying to make this kind of a deliberate contrast with what people kind of expected from their Westerns of their childhood sort of thing. I just sort of imagine like it isn't even like, it'd be one thing if it was sort of sold as sort of like goofy Western, and then the violence ramps up, and then like by the end you get to like the massacre, but it's sold as this kind of dark part of, like they even have like not a disclaimer, just kind of like a thing at the beginning which tells you what you're in for. And so I can kind of imagine like if you did walk into like a Sandra Bullock, Ryan Reynolds movie, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna sit down and eat my popcorn, this is all like cute and fun, and and then suddenly at the end it's all about terrorism.
It's like it just happens this rom-com took place on 9/11, and
I mean there is that. I mean it's I hate to kind of come back to that. I mean I feel like we've kind of sold the disjoint here, and but I think both films are actually pretty well made, and I think like either way it kind of works. So let's start with the fun stuff, maybe, just to and then kind of I like the Candice Bergen kind of sassy feminist.
She's great in this.
She's great in this. She's gorgeous, obviously.
You get to see your bum at one point, which is fantastic.
She's wearing that dress, and kind of gradually it comes off, and then she changes, and then you get that kind of going on. I don't think I'm going to put her on our podcast girlfriend list. I mean, your mileage may vary, but I think she's both very fetching and charming, and very good in this. I think she's. I also really like Peter Strauss, who I was not necessarily. I mean, he's a little bit of a kind of generic pretty boy at first, and he's kind of got that quality, but he's got some acting chops. He's a fun guy, and you kind of end up he also can kind of handle himself in the action scenes. There's a knife fight scene where I think he does really well, and I think it's really effective. I like the kind of romantic comedy aspect of it. it's fun stuff. I know next week we're going to do Ballad of Bastards.
Ballad of Bastard Scruggs.
Yeah, Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and I think one of the sequences in that film, kind of borrows a lot from this.
That's true. Yeah, that
so
does.
at least in kind of thematically, and we can kind of talk about that a little bit more next week. But clearly there's a lot of fun stuff. Donald Pleasence shows up as Isaac Cucumber.
Fantastic.
He's so much fun. Again, another character you can see maybe Stephen Root in the Coen Brothers film.
Oh yeah,
apparently I can't pronounce at this point, but hand shot. You can pretty much kind of see that. I mean, there's some nice stuff here. It's hypothetically on the side of the Native Americans, although it does seem to be a bunch of Italian people in bronzer.
That's what I was going to say. The Indians all look like Ricardo Montalban or whiter. Like, yes. I think there's like one or two actual Indians in the cast, but for the most part, it's just like an Italian Western. It's vaguely not white people.
Yeah, I mean, our lead, our kind of like head Native American guy, the chief or whatever, is like a Spotted Wolf. He's Jorge Rivero. So
yeah,
it's not exactly a Native American name, I wouldn't suspect. But yeah, no. I really like that stuff. It's goofy, it's fun. It works. I don't know. It's weird to kind of talk about it without kind of talking about the ending.
Yeah, we'll try to keep those two parts as separate as possible. We'll talk about this, but yeah, Candice Bergen is really great in this. I just love how she basically has no sympathy for how dumb and innocent Onus is. Like, she's just like, will you get over this shit and grow up? Like, yeah, okay, they're Soldier Boy, apple pie, the American spirit, all that bullshit. Here, she knows the world she's living in. She knows she walks the line between the two peoples, basically.
Yeah,
there's no
films of this type around this time. This is not the only one where it's like, oh, it's the white character who's lived with the Native Americans and can out Native American the Native American.
Yeah.
Things, which is kind of, again, a problematic trope, but
yeah, I don't think she really does too much of that. She just kind of shows that she's more worldly than Onus is. Right. Like he's basically like a 14-year-old boy, in big boy shoes, right? And I mean, she's just totally pragmatic. She has no shame or anything like that. She's like, yeah, I'll undress in front of him and stuff, and he's all worried about his fucking boners. Like, will you please put some clothes on, ma'am? And will you stop swearing so much? Like. Yeah, I think it's great. Like it is like they have great chemistry together, and I do like how they sort of gradually come together and appreciate each other. Where Kathy values basically just honesty above all things, and when she gets honest reactions from Onus, she's really into that, and she starts to really like him, right? And when Onus, starts to wise up to some things, she even likes him more, and when he finally confesses that he loves her and all that, she's like, well, don't tell me this unless it's true, because I don't want to fucking just be told that because that's something you think you have to say or something like that, because I'm trying to wed the pretty white girl who should be in the kitchen and all that bullshit. Like she's totally just thrown all that crap aside. So it is a really good rom-com. Like you said, there's a more enjoyable version of this film where it's just those two traveling through the Old West, and maybe the only sort of conflict that really happens is maybe they encounter the Donald Pleasence character and they have to deal with him, but there's no massacre rape fest at the end with chopped off arms and shit and children being shot and
yeah, no, I mean I'll say her performance reminds me a little bit of the young girl in True Grit, the original True Grit.
Right.
She's got that same kind of like that sassy, spunky, kind of Western woman kind of thing going on, which was a trope even going back to the pulp novels of the time. There was a little bit of that, kind of like the spunky Western girl. So I think there is this kind of sense in which, oh no, that's kind of a modern invention. And I mean, to a certain degree it is. I mean, certainly, these two actors do not look like, I mean, they definitely look like kind of teenage heartthrobs of
the
late 60s, early 70s. And that's an intentional kind of move there. But
I feel like Candice Bergen wouldn't quite look that good if she had been with the Cheyenne for like 2 years. You know, like she'd be probably a little rough around the edges, but you know,
there's a little bit of a kind of this is Answering the Searchers as well. That film that we will never ever cover, so we'll never cover it.
That's right.
There is a sense in which this is like, okay, The Searchers ends, and then this is sort of like 2 weeks later or whatever. You know, there.
And John Wayne would be Instead of the army, it'd be John Wayne leading a fucking posse of fucking rapists and murderers.
Yeah. And they're like, it is like one of those things. Like we're kind of like going, oh yeah, there's like this kind of fun, romance element kind of going on, and it's really in the middle hour of the film, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the beginning, it's kind of like, yeah, well, I'd like to rape her, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
They're literally, these soldiers are not good people, and then like, oh, there's a massacre of those soldiers. It's like, oh, come on, nobody. Native Americans, they never rob a paymaster. It's like, oh, yes, they would.
Yeah, they would. Yeah, Candice Bergen kind of dispels some of that myth. It's like, how do you think they get the fucking guns? They need money. They're buying them from somebody, you dumbass. And yeah,
these soldiers are like too dumb for words. It is kind of one of those things of she is clearly more knowledgeable than they are. I mean, but it's just like, how are you this dumb? And the reality is, well, they just are.
I imagine it probably wasn't too far removed. I mean, they're just conscripting people out of the general population. I doubt they had much training. It's because, I mean, even Civil War
takes place during the Civil War. So,
so it's like we just need people who can vaguely shoot, and we need to stand them in a line and shoot.
And then we can also like the cavalry, the volunteers, and so this is the goal here is not we're not soldiers. We're going off and massacring Native Americans. That's what we do. We're creating new land to give to white people that will never be given to the African Americans that are being freed in the South, right? And so and the film is definitely, I mean, it just kind of leans on that a little bit hard right at the beginning, and then all those characters die, and then you just kind of you get this scene where our buddy, Peter Strauss is Honus. He recites from the Charge of the Light Brigade. And then, we just kind of move on.
It's like we should say a prayer or something. Candice Bergen's like, you're just basically wasting our time. Like, let's move on. And by the way, throw away your socks because the Indians end up tracking you through your socks, you dumbass.
Yeah, no, he went back for his fucking sock. I mean, I understand, if you're going to be walking 100 miles, you probably want some socks, but still, no. Ends up being not the best move.
Yeah.
Oh, it works out in the end, because you got to kill a red man. Apparently, that's just lose your sock, Native American dies. That's just out here, I guess.
But I mean, you ends up with him in a contest with this other guy, this Native American, and even Candice Bergen's like, well, you got to kill him now. Like he's down for the count. You got to kill him.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'll say this: Peter Strauss he does Horrified really well. The stuff that he witnesses and the stuff he ends up having to do, it's like it visibly shakes him, throughout the film. But then it goes back to goofy romantic comedy, so it's like a little bit of a
kind of it rotates from one to the other fairly. It's like, oh, massacre, violence, then we're stuck under a blanket, And I mean, modern films actually do this pretty well. I was particularly in the snuggling under the blanket, under the coat scene where she kind of comes and, snuggles with him. Is like, oh, I just need to be warm. I'm freezing. And then he has to give her the coat and then go, sit by himself. And then it starts raining. I think that's when that happens. But it reminded me a lot of like the recent Wonder Woman film. It's got sort of a similar vibe.
Yeah,
and modern films have a way of sort of. I thought it was kind of out of place there as well. But modern films have kind of learned to balance these things a little bit better and kind of pace out the comedy a little bit more. This feels like it really needed another couple of drafts. I'd be interested to know how much of this is in the original because it's based on a novel, and I'd be interested to know like was this kind of a goofy novel that then got kind of like repurposed into this like anti-war message?
I gotta feel the novel itself probably wasn't all that goofy, but I wonder if the massacre is even in the novel. Honestly, I don't know, but it's like
because it's a novel about the massacre, and then like they hire a couple of actors and then go, okay, now be charming for 30 minutes, like
yeah. It is just weird. Like there are so many questions, and man. So this basically gets some history wrong, but it is basically based on the Sand Creek massacre, where a Cheyenne village of like about 500 people,
like 700 people, something
700 people, something like that, and like 500 of them were killed. Like it was just like a cavalry force of like 600 and something, and they just marched right over it,
and mostly women and children as well.
And apparently, and so this was kind of unprovoked. Like in the movie, there's the initial Indian attack, and I guess that's just totally unhistorical. That actually didn't happen. Like there was no incident apparently that really provoked what they did to that village. So honestly, I think it was more involved around just a bunch of racists wanting to take land. Like it was just, there was no it wasn't a revenge or anything like that. It was just purely let's get them the fuck out of here kind of thing.
Well, the background of the Sand Creek massacre is that they had originally ceded this, most of Colorado to the Native Americans, and then they discovered gold.
Gold, yeah.
And they went, oh no, we told you could have this, but we have lead, so we get the gold as well. And then that's sort of the way that happened. And they just sort of forced them into smaller and smaller bits of land until it does seem like the instigating event was just kind of this is ours now. I mean, and that's how the West was settled,
Yeah, and from what I was reading about it, like I just did sort of a brief scan through some different pages, including Wikipedia and stuff. And from what I can gather, that village, they tried to surrender. Like they threw up the flags, like that's shown in the film. And they just ignored it and just ran in there and ran right through them, like just ran right over them. And it's fucking gross. It's like,
yay, American history.
Yeah, it's just pathetically monstrous. And
I mean, we do kind of like run into the thing. I was kind of criticizing the film slightly for, man, these are like cartoon villains, but the real history is not that divorced from that.
Yeah.
I mean, like they really were just like, oh well, they're just savages. Like, go kill them. Why let them live?
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the way they treat them in the thing. Like you see like grown men shooting down little babies, basically, like for no fucking reason. It's just fucking disgusting.
I mean, it's genocide. That's exactly what's going on here. They're just going through and massacring it, like an entire tribe of people.
And as far as this movie, like making a point about that stuff, as much as it is a tonal shift from the rom-com stuff, I still applaud it, and I don't think it's just cheap exploitation, which I think a lot of the criticisms of the film back in the day were just basically saying, oh, this is just another exploitation film with lots of blood and no sense to it. It's like, no, I think they're really going for something here. It's just maybe tonally it's a little off, and maybe
you wed it to the fun stuff, and it feels it also kind of like luxuriates it in a way without. It's tough to kind of do violence like this and sort of portray it not as kind of like fun action movie violence stuff. And I think that's some of the problem there is that it does it comes across as horrific, but it's also like it's fun moviegoer stuff. And it's kind of play that tone right. I mean I think that largely, it is effective in terms of the way it works on screen. I think it does kind of play as horrific, and in fact, it's in a way that like seeing films of this era with this level of gore, it's actually more effective than modern films because you watch a more modern film and it's like, well, yeah, we've just got better technology now and we can make it look more quote unquote realistic, but really that's pushing it in this like ever more. Kind of like detailed and ever more like kind of high res direction. But here, you see people being shot through the head and their, blood kind of gushing out of their eyeballs and that kind of stuff. And it's like, it really works just because it's in this format, and that's something that we kind of run into just as modern viewers, kind of seeing this stuff, and that we're not used to kind of seeing that level of gore in films that look like this. So
I really want like the separate film because it's such a fucking downer at the end. It's just I get the message you're trying to send, but at the same time, I still want to see that happy story between Candice Bergen and Peter Strauss too.
There's also, I mean, interestingly, I think that because we're kind of the middle portion of the film, one of the key characters is Donald Pleasence as Isaac Cucumber, who's, goofy, kind of, I'm just going around selling my wares, but really I'm selling rifles to the Native Americans, and I'm stealing from the U.S. Army and all that sort of thing.
And did I mention I'm a psychopath?
Right. I'm gonna tie you up and keep you in the back, and I'm not actually gonna kill you. And then,
I love it. He's just, they full out go almost scenery chewing with him, but it works. It's just they give him prosthetic teeth and shit, so he's got like these really bad, like he's got these buck teeth that are even angled weird, like they were chipped or something like that, and he's talking through them, and he's got this chimney sweep fucking British accent going on, Cockney shit, and
he's almost like Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins or something like that. He's almost pushing in that direction. He's got the big top hat. I mean, he's a big colorful character. It's interesting that like the whole thing is, that Honus is like, well, no, I can't let him keep these rifles. I've got to burn the thing down, and because he's just going to use those against U.S. soldiers. But really, the arms dealer, maybe if they'd had those rifles, they could have not died. So, in a way, Honus, you're not like directly responsible, but you played a role in this,
Yeah, and it makes me wonder if his character ever like comes to that realization that things might have been different if he had been able to sell like those 30-40 rifles to the Indians before the fucking cavalry showed up.
Yep. Well, and there's this there's this kind of paradox. I mean, it's trying to sort of portray the violence that sort of both sides of this conflict are capable of inflicting, and it's trying to kind of give a little bit of a nuanced look at look, both the Native Americans, but they're like responding to this kind of open imperialist aggression, it's trying to kind of not sugarcoat that, but also to put kind of our lead, to put Honus in this situation of this kind of divided loyalty. And I think that, kind of the where we're supposed to kind of leave him, where his kind of emotional journey is supposed to be is, like, fuck all these guys, I think there's a little bit of that going on. But yeah, no, there is this kind of like complex valence there, which again gets kind of lost in the kind of romantic stuff. And I mean, literally, like he gets shot in the leg. She pulls him into a cave and then like nurses him back to health. She feeds him some snake, and then
they bang.
Apparently,
then all of a sudden the onus is on her. But yeah, like
look at that. We both had a gag, and they both worked about as well as the other. No,
and I still feel really bad about it, joking about this movie. But yeah, and what was I gonna say? I can't even remember now. It's just
yeah. I mean, so then we do get to the end, and we do get to the kind of like hyper violent massacre stuff, and interestingly, we kind of get the guy who's sort of leading the way is the sort of the husband. Candice Bergen's, I guess, fiance. Is she supposed to be married to him, or is it just like
fiance?
Yeah, okay. Because she was also like married to Spotted Wolf, although that's not a marriage that's recognized by the territory of Colorado.
And apparently Spotted Wolf's pretty much not into monogamy anyway. He's like, I got a side bitch, and you got yourself some side dick. So
it's the 60s. It's free love, man.
Her and the Indians are sort of coded as hippies.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, there's certainly a coding going on there where, I mean, a not unproblematic coding, but they're definitely coding. The Native Americans are both hippies and North Vietnamese.
And I mean, the movie doesn't go as deep into it as I wish it would have, where there's the conversations between Onus and Kathy, where Onus is like, all those Indians like scalping people and stuff like that, and then Kathy's like, well, where do you think they learned it from? Now that's not 100% true. Like there is pretty good evidence of Native American population scalping before Europeans came to North America. Once the Europeans came to North America, it ramped up big time because they were putting tribes against each other and paying them for scalps. So
that's how colonialism works.
Mm-hmm.
You find like natural divisions between tribes, and then you just arm one side or arm both sides, and then you get them to kill each other. It's complete. What's the story of Africa since the 16th century?
Right.
That's that.
Yeah.
Oh man, this podcast gets depressing. Hey, come for the goofy jokes and the drinking, and
I'm trying
stay
to
for the genocide.
Yeah, I keep trying to fixate on Candice Bergen's ass and try to forget the rest of the movie,
which is not an unreasonable thing to do. But yeah, no. Then we get so the husband is sort of like the guy. He's not in charge. He's kind of like second in command or whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
And then you have the guy literally wearing a pith helmet, who is drinking like the entire time from a flask and like singing "Battle Hymn of the Republic," and just just shows up like just kill them all. No, they're dead. Yeah, don't.
Yeah, he's just a piece of shit, and right. He just expects to walk in and it's just going to be an easy job. He gets shot in the arm, and at that point, when he gets shot in the arm, it's like everything's on. Then it's just like, I'm going to kill every woman and child in this fucking village because these savages dared bloody me.
Exactly. Yeah. And walks in and just kill him. Yeah, why not? They should die. And and man, some of those. I mean that. There's a rape sequence that's pretty horrific. Full nudity there.
Yep.
And then you see the body like strung up afterwards, like they gutted her, and it's like, oh my god. I mean, it's really, really intense and horrific, and really
the word
visceral stuff.
Yeah, and I'm still thinking about. Candice Bergen tries to get all the women and children out of the village into safety, and they go down like this creek or something, like this little valley or whatever, and they're just like set up for the slaughter. The fucking cavalry just runs right down on them, and it's just like rape fest and murder fest, and then you see the aftermath. Onus sees it, and there's just all these bodies of women and children splayed all over the fucking rocks and the ground, and there's blood everywhere, and I'm like, Jesus. That ain't the movie I watched for like for an hour and 30 minutes.
Like, do you have a poem? And like you had a poem for your 21 white guys.
Yep.
What about now? What do you got to say to this? And I mean, it's very it's pretty again, it's bookended with these kind of two sequences of. And it does kind of show the scale of difference of
And sadly, those characters, I think they fully like Onus fully understands her by the end of it, and by that time it's too late, right? So it's just like,
Well, and he even tries to kind of rebel against the military, and he's trying to kind of fight on the side of the Native Americans a little bit. And what does he get for his troubles? Well, you're going to get hauled off to prison.
And you're probably going to be executed, court-martialed and executed for treason.
So we don't even get the happy ending. Like, I mean, it'd be one thing if they. I mean, I was kind of like, oh, they're going to just kind of go off and be like sad, but like together. But no, Candice Bergen goes off and lives with the Native Americans.
Yeah, where does Candice Bergen go? To some smaller reservation somewhere where they're put off, and how many people die of cholera in that fucking reservation before it's over, right?
She ends up on some version of the Trail of Tears, basically.
Yeah, because I mean, at this point, but by the time this sort of happens historically, half of the fucking Cheyenne Nation was dead from cholera alone.
Yeah,
that many people died, and then they just started systematically like wiping out small villages and stuff, and they lost a good like fourth of their fucking war council. Like their entire society was just turned over on its head in a matter of a couple years. As soon as they did this shit. So yeah.
Woohoo!
Mm-hmm. Yay! Go America! So I think my final thoughts on this. It makes some very salient points. There's some really great stuff in this film. Maybe watch the middle of it and forget about the beginning and the end if you want to enjoy yourself. Otherwise, it's pretty harrowing, and it's a gut punch. And I think you're right. I think the intention was to like set the viewer up for a gut punch to make the point, like to really get it across. And as far as that works, I think this makes it kind of a great movie, even though it's like a very tonally weird movie. And I don't think I ever want to watch it again. I think I'm one and done.
I own this one. I'd probably sit down and watch it again, but not anytime soon.
But I do recommend it. I think it is pretty.
Effective.
Yeah,
it's like a $3 rental on YouTube, I think, right now. So if you're looking for it, that's the way to get it. I bought the DVD, so.
All right. So box office 1.2 million in box office rentals, and apparently it did a little bit better overseas, which I think is to be expected because the idea of playing the U.S. cavalry as just murderers and rapists, even in 1970, probably isn't going to go over too well with the general U.S. audience, I don't think.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's at the time, this was definitely seen as a direct reference to My Lai, and it's to that was very much like on people's minds. Around that time.
Yeah.
The details of that had only kind of come out, I think, like the year before. And so, I mean, you see this and it's like, oh yeah, it's just, it's just referencing that. And I think that the film, I mean, is well made as it is. And I think, it also doesn't, it's kind of existing in both worlds of trying to kind of be kind of the goofy fun version and trying to kind of make the real point. And I think, if it had done either one of those things, I think it would have been more financially successful. I mean, we didn't really do you didn't really get like Oscar buzz around it or anything like that. Which the more kind of directly like serious version of this probably would have been like nominated for Oscars and that sort of thing. So,
DVD info. There's a Lionsgate DVD from 2006, and if you want to get this on Blu-ray. Apparently your best option, there's like 3 different German versions of this on Blu-ray. They all have English language tracks, but no subtitles. So if you're a person who wants to like still listen to your native language on the Blu-ray, but you want subtitles as well, just as an extra bonus, you're not going to get that unless you can speak German or Spanish or French, I think. So there you go. A little bit of trivia here. And in order to recreate the gory Sand Creek massacre of Cheyenne Indians, director Ralph Nelson sought the services of orphaned amputees. So various prosthetic limbs were affixed to them and chopped them off. That's common technique for this sort of stuff, especially in horror films. That was used a lot in horror films around this time too. Original work print of the movie was 135 minutes long. When it was test screened to an audience, they almost started a riot after watching this version. This was the only time that the full uncut version was shown, and it caused the studio to decide that it was unreleasable unless massive cuts were made. Yeah, no kidding.
It's just another 20 minutes of people getting like hacked to death.
Yeah. The movie was originally rated R by the MPAA in 1974. A new version was rated PG. Wow. Which removed most of the graphically violent parts from the massacre as well as toned-down rape scenes. But the scenes still contained full frontal nudity of a Native woman. Of course, that was kind of common for PG in that area. Anyway.
The ratings definitely don't mean the same thing in 1974
no.
as they do today.
But there we go. So next time out, we're going to be looking at the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. The Bastard of Ballad Scruggs, yeah. The Duster of Buster Ballad. I don't know what the fuck it's called.
Like that, yeah.
It's one of those fucking Coen Brothers films. Those fucking pretentious douchebags. Like to get ready for us to rip this movie apart.
Because it's awful. No, we both really like it. That's why we're gonna do it. That's the whole reason we did this whole segment. It's great.
Yeah. So Daniel, tell people where they can find you on the interwebs.
Well, if you want to hear me talk about things that are not genocide, well, I really don't have any of that right now. But I talk about Nazis on another podcast, God, I Don't Speak German, which you probably already know if you've been following this for any length of time. But you can find that There'll be a link in the show notes, and you can follow me on Twitter at Daniel E. Harper if you want to listen to me blather on about stuff more.
Yeah. It's a good podcast, but there's a lot less of Candice Bergen's ass in that one.
Yeah, I mean, there's not no Candice Bergen's ass. I mean,
yeah.
There's no Candice Bergen's ass. I don't know. We're going to have to do that Murphy Brown episode. Rush Limbaugh appeared on Murphy Brown once. And so if we do an episode on Rush Limbaugh, I can work in a Murphy Brown reference, and then it'll all be connected. So.
And you could use a picture of Candice Bergen's ass to sell the episode. That'd be great.
Yeah, that's the way to do that.
You can find us at tmbdos.podbean.com, where you can find our Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Facebook links. Join the Facebook group. Best way to find out what's coming up on the podcast, what's going on, and interact with us so we can read your comments. And you can tell us about how much you like Candice Bergen's ass, or if you don't like it. Whose ass do you prefer?
Or Soldier Blue,
Yeah, Peter Strauss's maybe. Soldier Blue Balls. Do you like his ass? I mean, come on, that's what it is.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I mean, if this movie wasn't so graphically just totally sick by the end, people would be joking about that. Like, that would be the reference. Soldier Blue Balls, in this goofy comedy from 1970 that no one's seen,
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll be back when we're back. Goodbye.
Cheers.
Tell your story, it's a true one, and I'll tell it like you'll understand. And I ain't gonna talk like some history man. I look out and I see land, young and lovely, hard and strong. For 15,000 years we've danced her praises, prayed our thanks, and we've just begun. This is my country, young and growing, free and flowing, sweet as sea. Yes, this is my country, ripe and bearing miracles in every pond and tree. I can stand upon a hill at dawn, look all around me, feel her surround me. Soldier Blue, can't you see her life has just begun? It's beating inside us, telling us she's here to guide us. Ooh, Soldier Blue, Soldier Blue, can't you see that there's another way to love her? Ooh. Yes, this is my country. I sprang from her, and I'm learning how to count upon her. Tall trees and the corn is high country. Yes, I love her, and I'm learning how to take care of her. Soldier Blue, Soldier Blue, can't you see that there's another way to love her? Soldier Blue, Soldier Blue, can't you see that there's another way to love her?
You have been listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For other episodes, our links to Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and our Facebook group, as well as links to podcasts and websites of similar interest, please visit us at tmbdos.podbean.com. Thank you. Drive through.